Hello, my name is Tom Knaust with the Bee Cause Project, and we are going to do a little spring hive inspection. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is pop the lid, and you can hear that crack. That's the propolis seal that's breaking. So the bees propolize the lid shut, and usually there's an inner cover here, but I have a feeder top on top. So we're just gonna remove the feeder top. And again, you can hear that crack of the propolis seal. And there's all of our little bees. And you can see that I'm doing this really slowly. It's important to move slowly when you're working with bees. If you move quickly, that'll get them a little agitated, and we're gonna do our best not to get them angry. And again, as we were talking about before we started, you'll hear if they get upset. It's very audible. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just pull one of these outside frames to give us a little space to work.
They're really sticky.
Yeah, so all of that stuff, that's called propolis. Propolis is a mixture of tree resin and beeswax, and that's what they use to propolize or stick everything together. And they do that so, you know, like in nature in a hollow tree cavity, it's just to kind of hold things together. You can imagine if a big storm came and they're in a tree,
Yeah,
it will move, you know, the tree is actually moving.
Yeah.
So that outside comb, not much going on. A little bit of nectar, you see the shininess. You can see they're just putting a little nectar in there, and there's one or two cells that have some pollen, but not much going on the outside frame.
Oh, I just saw a big pollen basket leg come up a minute ago.
Yeah.
In the middle.
So these next two frames, again, not much going on, but I'm gonna go in a little bit deeper, and we'll see what's happening here.
There they are.
All right, and this frame is filled with larvae. So you can see, especially right here, those C-shaped larvae in the bottom of the cells. And then as you go further out, the larvae are smaller, they're younger, and then over here you can see some eggs. And the eggs are 1/10 of the size of a grain of rice, so they're very hard to see. But this particular comb, it's pretty easy to see them. Can you see all those eggs in the bottom?
Yes.
There's one egg in the bottom of each
The
cell.
larva. Oh wow, they're so big right there, and
Yeah.
then they get smaller as you go out.
Yep. And then here's some pollen that they're depositing, and again, a little bit of nectar. And that's pretty standard. The way that they set up their brood is the queen will lay eggs in this area, and then they'll surround it with pollen and nectar, and that's what they'll be feeding the developing larvae.
So when it's kind of got those waves to it, is that just because of like inconsistency with the wax, or is that?
Yeah, these particular frames, they had foundation in them, which is a wax pre-embossed piece of wax that you put inside the frame to keep them from drawing comb across the frames.
Okay.
Now you can see here, these are some pretty old larvae.
Yeah,
See how much they fill the cell?
Wow.
And then, so the queen lays an egg, and then after 3 days, the egg hatches into a larva, and then the nurse bees will feed the larva until day 9, and on day 9, they put that capping over it. And then inside that capped cell, the larva will spin a cocoon and then metamorphosize into a bee, into an adult bee, and then on day 21, she chews her way out. And as we go through here, we'll get to some hatching brood.
So you said before we started that if if they were aggravated or a little bit more agitated, we would know by the sound.
Yeah.
So can you tell now? Does everybody seem fine?
They're
or?
super calm, yeah.
I thought so too. It didn't seem as like much of a roar as I expected.
Yeah. And this is this colony was started this spring as a nucleus colony. So it was just 5 frames of bees and brood that started in this bottom box. And then I've since put some drawn comb on top and they've expanded into this top box. And we'll go to the bottom and see there were empty frames in the bottom and they may have started drawing out some of those empty combs. We'll take a look down there. So the next frame, and as I'm going, these are getting heavier and heavier because there's just more resources in here.
You can really see the glistening of that nectar now.
Yeah, and one of the things you're looking for to assess the health of your colony in the spring is you're actually looking at these larvae, and you want to make sure that these older larvae, right before they get capped, are pearly white and they look super healthy. If they're discolored or if they're shrunken, that can mean a number of things, and that will just kind of indicate the health of the colony. This is a very healthy hive. The brood, and brood is a term that's used to refer to larvae of any stage, eggs, or cap brood. So,
okay.
General
term.
Yeah, basically bees in any stage of development is called brood. So the brood looks great, which is exactly what we're looking for.
Awesome.
And you can see over here, they've started to build. There was a little piece of comb missing, and so they've built that little piece of comb right there.
Wow.
And that's a good sign. That means they're getting some nectar. I have been feeding them.
In this top, or in this part you took off?
Yeah, in that top feeder, and we'll fill that when we're done here today.
What do you feed them with?
Sugar water, and I mix in, so it's 1-to-1 sugar water with some honey that I put in there.
Honey from them or honey just from any hive?
Honey that I've collected from years past, essentially.
Okay.
And that just kind of helps with digestion. It's better for them than to have straight sugar water. And then I put a little essential oil feeding stimulant in there that really gets them to drink that feed.
So when you see like their little heads poked down in there, what are they most likely doing in there?
Feeding the larva.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're seeing, especially on these frames with open brood. So open brood refers to, eggs or larvae that it's not capped. Once it gets capped, well, then there's no more feeding to be done. So you're not going to see as many nurse bees. But what you're seeing here, you see this one? Uh-huh. That is a baby bee. So she was probably born today, maybe yesterday, most likely today. And you can see how small and fuzzy, and she's not moving with much grace. She's a baby.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah, and what we're seeing here is also all females. And we're also seeing a nice variation in color. We've got some really dark bees. We've got some orange stripy bees. And that signifies just genetic diversity. That means the queen has mated with multiple drones from different genetic lines, and that's great to see.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that the coloration would indicate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll move to the next. So it's great to see the queen has moved up into this box, which we put on, I guess?
Yeah, like 4 weeks ago maybe, if that long?
Yeah, two or three. And this center frame is beautiful. So you can see as we get into the middle, they've just progressed more. So these larvae are older up top, and they've capped most of the bottom, and they've put a lot of pollen and nectar in there. So look at that beautiful variation of pollen colors. That's great. That means they're getting a diversity of pollen from different plants, which means good nutrition. And then they've got a lot of nectar up top. And I keep saying nectar. So nectar, when it's uncapped, when they bring nectar into the hive, it's actually 80% water. And then the bees will stand over top and fan the nectar and dehydrate it down to 18%. And once it gets to 18%, then it's honey, and then they can cap that, and that will be stored in the colony for food for them for later.
So like right now, like you had said, we weren't smoking the hive because we really didn't need to at this point because they were so docile and, you know, just doing their thing. So as you're pulling them out, are they still working? Like, are they still doing the jobs that they would normally do because we've not smoked them?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
We haven't really interrupted what's going on
day.
too much, which is surprising. You know, it's honestly one of the most shocking things for people who have never been inside a beehive, is to learn that they're pretty much okay with this inspection.
Yeah. They're like, hey, how's it going, Tom?
Yeah.
We're good.
Now here's something to look for in your spring inspection. So this is called a queen cup. And you can see it's a vertical orientation as opposed to these horizontal cells. And that's basically just like an insurance policy. So if something happened to the queen, they would immediately move a fertilized egg into that queen cup and then draw it out and start making a new queen.
So it's just sitting there ready.
Yep.
If they should need it.
Yep. And then as the colony grows, when they outgrow their space, or if there's a really strong nectar flow, and they start to backfill the brood nest and the queen runs out of places to lay eggs,
Right.
that will incite swarming. And then they will go ahead and the queen will actually lay an egg in one of those or several of them. They'll get to making new queens and they'll start to draw that queen cup into a queen cell, and it'll get to be, you know, an inch long. And then they'll make a new queen before the old queen leaves with the swarm.
That's awesome. Look at her pollen baskets. Oh, she just went right down in there. They were just absolutely crammed full.
Yeah, and we'll probably see more of that as we get down into this next box. Yeah, so as we get to these outer frames, again, you know, not as much going on. I don't need to go all the way to the outside. I'm just taking a look. There's not even eggs in this one yet, so the queen has not visited that frame yet.
So sounds like they work from the inside out?
Usually.
Okay.
And it just kind of depends. If if I had installed the nuke on one side, then they would probably be all on one side and expand in the other direction. But I put them right in the middle, and they're just kind of expanding up and out. You hear that?
Yeah, sounds changed.
So what probably happened was when I was putting that last frame in, I might have squished a bee.
And they stop it.
Yeah, and that kind of sets off the alarm pheromone, and they're like, hey, what's going on? You know, and that's why as a hobby beekeeper, it's really a luxury to be able to work hives, you know, this slowly and this gently. When you watch commercial beekeepers work colonies,
Yeah, it's not that way.
it's not that way.
So
And
why is this one white?
That's a plastic frame, so
Just a different frame.
that came with the nucleus colony that I got. I prefer to use all wooden frames. And I'm just going to go right into the center here. We'll see what we see. So you were asking about burr comb.
Yeah?
So this is burr comb. And the burr comb, you know, they just attach things however and wherever they want to.
Okay.
So that's burr comb. And you have to be a little bit careful when you're working with the frames with burr comb, because you can roll the bees
Yes.
and squish them. And again, the less bees you squish, the more pleasant your inspection experience is going to be.
Right. Well, I know rolling the queen is the worst thing. So.
Exactly. All right. And now down in this bottom box, way more established. This is probably one of the frames that came with the nucleus colony. And you can see we've got capped worker brood, which is this really smooth brood. You know, you can see the outline of the cell and it's quite smooth. And down here, this is drone brood. So those are male bees. And the male bees are bigger, they've got a longer gestation cycle before they hatch, and the cells are bigger and they protrude like that. And here's another baby bee. This one was probably hatched in the last couple minutes. You can see her.
Welcome into the world, baby bee.
And you've got lots of beautiful pollen surrounding the brood. This is a great frame.
Yeah, those drones are really protrusive.
Yeah.
Protrusive.
Protrusive.
For sure. Great word. No, that's a great word.
And I'll lay this down.
Their big yellow britches on.
I know, I want to pull that out and show her. So yeah, here's a bee with full pollen baskets. See her right there?
Wow.
So she's loaded down. She just came back from a foraging trip and she's gonna deposit that pollen into a cell. And what they do is, so bees are negatively charged, so when they land on a flower, and they're covered in hair. So they land on a flower and the pollen kind of jumps onto their bodies, and then on the ends of their back legs, they have little combs. And they comb the pollen out of their hair and they mix it with honey and ball it up into those little pollen pellets. Here's a drone bee, there's a male you can see. A little bit bigger bodied, much larger eyes. They can fly a little bit faster, and their only job is to go out and try to mate with virgin queens. So they've got bigger eyes to see the queen and bigger bodies to fly and catch her. And now
Do the drones die after they mate?
they do.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah, they do. And here's a bee that she looks like she's taking a break, but she's hatching out of this cell right there. And it takes quite a while for them to chew their way all the way out, but I'm sure I'll catch one here
Hang out.
in the process, yeah.
With an inspection, do you check every single frame? Or do you kind of...
You can, it depends on your goal. Since this is, we're making this educational video, I'm just going through and I'm gonna look at each one and we're gonna talk about what we're seeing. Generally, if I'm doing my first spring inspection, I will go through every frame and I'll take a mental inventory of what I'm seeing and how many frames of capped brood, and that'll kind of give me a sense of when this colony is going to need to be managed again. So like this one, the queen's got plenty of space up top to lay, they've got room for resources, so they're just kind of growing and they've got plenty of room, so I won't need to check them again for weeks. If it were a different case and they were loaded down with nectar and pollen and brood and there was no room for the queen to lay, well then I would need to do something. Either make a split and give them space, or, that's what I would do, is make a split, give them space. Some people like to let their bees swarm and let that natural process happen and let the parent colony make a new queen, and that's really a healthy thing for the bees to have their queen replaced. That also creates a break in the brood cycle, which disrupts the varroa mites life cycle, which is really great for the colony.
And for other colonies.
Mm-hmm. All right, and there she is.
There she is! Oh, she's so big!
She's huge. Wow.
And that's kind of the main reason I wanted to go through this colony completely, was to find the queen so we could get a shot of her.
Oh.
Did you see her
Oh,
little
yeah.
head? Oh, yeah. No, she is not conspicuous.
Yeah, so she has a much longer abdomen. She's got the same thorax as the worker bees, so the front of her looks the same as the workers, but her abdomen is much longer so that she can reach down and deposit those eggs in the bottom of the cell. And here is a little baby bee hatching her way out.
Oh, hi, baby. Do the others help?
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, it kind of looks like they do, but then they walk away, so it's like she's really just on her own.
Yeah, they really don't. It's like the first rite of passage is chewing your way out of that cell.
And then turning around and cleaning it up.
Yep. And then the first job is to clean up the cell and propolize the inside, which disinfects it and gets it prepared for the queen to lay a new egg.
So, yeah, how long before she lays a new egg in that cell? Like, can she just do it right away, or do they take time on it?
As soon as it's cleaned out and ready to go. And
Just keep their heads in there that whole time, or is there something wrong with that bee?
which one?
The one right there. Is it just, it's sitting, its head is just,
Oh.
is that normal? Because I thought, oh, shouldn't you go?
Yeah, she could be, she's moving, so she's
Oh,
probably
okay.
not taking a nap.
Okay.
Those are all pollen cells, so there's a good chance that she's depositing pollen.
Okay.
When they come into the hive with pollen on their legs, they rake it off into the cell and then they mash it down with their heads
Oh, okay.
to pack it in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll take a little pollen snack so y'all can try it, because it's a pretty unique experience. It's also fun to kind of see the different color variation.
Yes, from the different plants they're going to.
Yeah, because they'll put different pollen into the same cell.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Here, we can take a little sample. Let's see, somewhere without brood. Let's go right here. Get a couple of them out of there.
They're like, no, we worked so hard. Yeah, that's really different colors in there. It's like orangey yellow and really like light yellow and then like white.
It's like a mosaic.
Yeah, and here you can see where they've just, one of those workers has just put some pollen right down in there.
Now, why did you smoke your hands? Was that to get rid of some of the bees? Like,
I squished a bee with my thumb,
Oh, okay.
and she stung me. So that was just kind of to mask the alarm pheromone.
oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the trickiest part. And that's one of the reasons I don't like to wear gloves, is because you have more dexterity and you're feeling everything. So I can feel a bee under my finger. I cannot feel a bee under a gloved finger.
Sure.
So I find that I'm squishing way less bees when I'm not wearing gloves. So here's a beautiful frame of capped brood. And there's probably, 500 cells on this frame. And within the next 10 days, that's 500 new bees in the colony. So every time we're seeing capped brood, and it's all at different stages of development, but anything capped is at least 9 days old. So it's only going to be another 12 days before those bees hatch out.
Is that honey in the corner?
Yeah, good eye, Emily. So, and you can actually see this is in process, right? So the nectar, it's almost ripe, and then as it ripens, they put that wax capping over it, and then it ends up looking like this. So that's what capped honey looks like. It looks similar to capped brood, but the capped brood, you can really see the outline of the cell. And the capped honey, you can't really see, it's more homogeneous. But that is certainly delicious capped honey under there. And some more beautiful brood on this side.
They really do look very healthy.
Yeah, this is a really healthy colony. And this is beautiful spring honey. Look at that, super clear. It's most likely hollies, different holly species, and blackberry and clover. That's all blooming right now. Yeah, these bees look excellent, super healthy.
How many bees come on when you bring a nuclear?
So it's 5 frames, right, filled with brood and bees. It's generally about 10,000 or so bees. Because they also, when you make those nukes or nucleus colonies, they will shake bees into there as well.
Okay.
So you've got a nice population of adult bees along with a lot of emerging brood that's going to hatch out any moment. So they're kind of primed to just take off.
Thank you.
How is it?
Yeah.
It's quite an
spice of
experience.
The smoke. I'm not even talking about the smoke. To me, there's something about it that always tastes like the way pipe smoke smells. You know that that tobacco-y pipe smoke specifically. How that smells.
So here's that bee bread.
Oh.
I'm gonna taste that. That'll be an experience. It all tastes a little different depending on what floral sorts it's coming from, but it all has a pretty similar interesting. Maury, you want to try some?
Oh, sure.
It's very interesting.
I
don't know
it's
if I'd want it.
interesting.
It has like a real proteiny kind of quality to it,
Yeah,
and chalky.
yeah.
And
Both
then
of
it
those
hits the
things
back
are
of your
true.
tongue,
You can
and
just eat
it's-
that whole thing.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if I've
Hive
ever
bees.
just purposefully eaten pollen.
And it's warm.
You know, people sell bee pollen, but the bee pollen that they're selling is just the pollen that gets collected from a little device that goes on the front of the colony.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it kind of rakes it off their legs. But that hasn't been fermented yet. So bee bread, they take the pollen, they put it inside the cell, and it goes through a fermentation process which breaks down the pollen protein or the pollen grains to make it digestible. So even for humans, like eating bee pollen, not so, you know, it's not so bioavailable. It just kind of passes through your body. But if you eat bee bread,
Oh, it's different.
it's very different, and this is very bioavailable, and it's really good for you. Even though it tastes very weird.
It does taste very weird. So it's like a bee Flintstone vitamin.
That's right.
Is what I'm hearing you say.
You nailed it.
I mean, it's a little chewy at the end, but
You might have had a little more
You,
wax.
yeah, you had
Yeah,
some
mine
wax in there.
did.
okay.
Mine was like literally just like a pellet.
Oh, okay.
It didn't really have a lot of wax in it.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause actually, upon first tasting, quite good.
You probably had a lot of more honey in yours.
I think so.
Mine was kind of straight
Straight bread.
bread.
Straight
bread.
carbs.
Straight bee carbs.
Bee carbs.
And now, just because I'm curious to see if they have drawn any of this comb in the bottom,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull this box. And they're starting to get
A
little,
little annoyed.
and they haven't. So those are all just empty frames.
Yeah.
But as they grow, they'll grow down into that box.
Okay. I think when I was a kid, I thought that the bottoms were closed. That it was like a, that it wasn't open to go down into the bottom. And it's so interesting opening the top and like looking kind of straight down through the hive itself. I didn't see any pests.
Nope.
Not one.
The varroa mites are extremely hard to see,
Right.
but they're in there. Oh, that bee is pooping.
Oh my gosh. I've never seen a bee poo.
I've actually, in my 10 years of beekeeping, I've never seen it actually happen in real time.
Well,
That was
yeah,
my
you have.
first time I've seen a bee defecate
Holy cow.
in real time. Okay, get them out of there. There was one hive beetle that I squished. It was in the
Oh, really?
top feeder. Oh, and there's one. So the bees kind of chase these girls. But that's this African small hive beetle. It's something we have a big problem with down here in the low country because we just have the right climate for them. It's very hard to inspect a colony without squishing any bees. Is it possible? I'm sure I've managed to do that, but it's very hard to not squish a bee
Yeah.
at all. And when that happened was when I placed that box on top of the lid.
Gotcha.
So this colony, just based on the traffic at the entrance when we were first looking at them,
Right.
I could tell that this one is a little bit further along than that one.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we did find some of those deep frames drawn out in the bottom.
Okay, so
Well-
you installed it with both of the bottom with empty frames.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them started as a 5-frame nucleus colony in this middle medium box.
Okay.
And then I added drawn comb on top for the queen to expand into so that they didn't have to spend their energy building that new comb.
Okay.
So that'll just kind of give them a head start.
Well, it seems like they've used that time well.
They have, and this one, so if you remember from that first colony, those outside frames were empty, right? These are full. And I'm seeing that, just from looking down in here, and we'll take a look. It's they're pretty much full of honey, and they've already ripened a lot of it. So this colony is ahead of the other one, and that will persist, you know. Yeah, and I'm actually going to go into the next one because that one's got some burr comb attached to the wall. So one thing I like to tell new beekeepers also is, if you'll notice, I never put the hive tool down.
No, yeah. It's like a third hand.
It is like a third hand, and the more you can hold on to that and not put it down, the less you're looking for it when you need it.
Oh, wow.
So this, you know, just imagine those, in that colony, those outside frames were empty.
Yeah.
In this one, they're full of capped brood and capped honey. So this colony is way ahead of that other one. And then something else that happens, as Amora just noticed,
Yes.
when a colony is stronger, they are more likely to, you know, sacrifice a guard bee to defend themselves. So they're already showing a little bit more signs of aggression than the other one was. We're also getting to be, it's a little bit later in the day, so that's kind of normal.
Everybody's coming home for the day.
Everybody's coming home, the more bees.
Yeah, there's a lot more hovering right now than there was before.
Yeah. You know, your spring inspection, and this isn't our first inspection of these colonies, but when you're doing your first inspection, the main things that you're looking for are good, healthy brood, the absence of disease, which we haven't seen any,
No.
the absence of pests. Yeah, you just want to make sure that your colony is strong and healthy coming into spring. One of the things you can do is called a mite wash. You can do a sugar roll or an alcohol wash, and that's a way to test the mite levels in the colony, and that'll just kind of inform what you're going to do. Are you going to, you know, if you have really high mite count, you have to do something. You can either pull the queen and make them go through a period of broodlessness, or you can treat them with some sort of miticide. These colonies came from a producer that does use miticides. So these bees were treated last fall.
Okay.
So they tend to come into spring with pretty low mite populations, and they're pretty healthy. And that's kind of what we're experiencing here.
So when will you expect to need to harvest honey from either of these? Or is one going to be more, like, going to have to do it sooner than the other?
So right now we're kind of in between honey flows. We had our spring honey flow, and they've used that honey, that nectar that was available to build up. And then coming here in the next month, like mid-May, we'll put honey supers on these colonies.
Okay.
And they'll fill them up from mid-May to mid-June, and then we'll harvest at the end of June.
Do you put the super on the top or the bottom?
On the top.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of in closing and to wrap up, you're looking for, you know, good healthy brood when you're doing your spring inspection. You're looking for a good population of adult bees,
Yeah.
a good laying queen with a nice pattern, good resources in the hive, you know, plenty of honey and pollen coming in. And yeah, both of these colonies are doing great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.